Welcome to Ideas for Tomorrow.
Welcome to this virtual Ideas for Tomorrow, and thank you for joining us. Our guest today is Kevin Love, one of the great athletes of our time. He's top-ranked NBA player, an Olympic gold medalist, and now a hero of mental health. 3 years ago, Kevin became the first NBA player to speak openly about anxiety and depression. His example has encouraged others to seek help inside and outside professional sports. Here's a video to tell you more.
From an early age, influenced by his NBA player father, Kevin Love loved to play basketball. Known for his 5-time All-Star moves and NBA championship title, he repeatedly brings fans to their feet. But it's what happens off the court that inspires the most. After a panic attack during an NBA game in 2017, Kevin Love made a daring decision to share his battle with anxiety and depression in an essay he wrote for the Players Tribune. Reaction and reach stretched far and wide. Love's honesty helped increase mental health awareness through discussion and NBA-sponsored PSAs.
What he has done is just open himself up wide to society. He's helped so many people who are struggling emotionally like he has at times.
Giving of his time, energy, and resources, Kevin Love uses kindness to help others and to feel better. He established the Kevin Love Fund to inspire people to live their healthiest lives while providing the tools to achieve physical and emotional well-being. He's an NBA ambassador for Hoops for St. Jude, benefiting the Children's Research Hospital. Remembering his college basketball start, his donation provides for the future of the UCLA program with the Kevin Love Athletic Performance Center. With the season sidelined by coronavirus, Kevin Love is still making winning moves during the pandemic. To help people cope with COVID-19 related anxiety, the Kevin Love Fund and Headspace offer a free mindfulness and meditation app. Using his athletic stardom in a recent PSA, he's become a mental health advocate in times of quarantine.
While, most of us are having to socially distance, don't socially isolate.
Whether it's donating to the team's arena workers who found themselves out of work, encouraging area students, or organizing meal deliveries to Cleveland healthcare workers, he gives back again and again to the community.
Thanks, Kevin.
While he expects nothing in return, recently, Kevin Love has been recognized for his efforts, becoming a finalist for the Muhammad Ali Sports Humanitarian Award. Strong, courageous, and kind, Kevin Love shines a light on a hidden struggle for so many and fuels life-changing impact with his generosity. He reminds us that above all else, vulnerability can be our greatest strength, and helping others a way to heal.
Kevin, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I feel like even though I'm not in Cleveland, I still feel at home being able to join you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're delighted to have you. Needless to say, as you can see, big fan.
Good on you.
Wearing the colors, always when it matters. So thank you very much for giving us some of your time.
Of course.
So Kevin, obviously there is a lot to talk about with someone like yourself who's been such an accomplished athlete, professional athlete, and a member of our community. But let's start with your basketball career, the obvious first topic. You started playing very early. Can you speak a little bit about people who influenced you at the very beginning?
Yeah, well, for me, it was pretty easy because basketball was just in my blood. Like you guys had shown on the video there, my dad had kind of put the ball in my hands, and he was a high school All-American out of Morningside High School in Inglewood, California. He's a 2-time college All-American at the University of Oregon, and then was a 9th pick in the 1971 draft by the Baltimore Bullets. Obviously now the Washington Wizards. Had a several-year career, played for 4 separate teams, Baltimore Bullets, the Lakers, the Atlanta Hawks, and the San Antonio Spurs. And then worked, various jobs after that. Had my brother, myself, my sister. So I'm the middle child. And so, just always chased the game, always had basketball. Like it was my sole focus, really my North Star, and just something that, was always driving me. But speaking of that driving force, it was really my father that was behind all of that. And, then you grow into people that you look towards and look up to. Like for me, born in '88. So when I was in my youth stage and really young, I was looking at the guys like Charles Barkley, was looking at Shaquille O'Neal, the guys you see on, TNT, calling the games now, commentating, that are so fun to watch and listen to. But throughout the years, just grew to love guys like Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki and those type of players that changed the game, especially at my position at the power forward.
Yeah. So of all these guys that you used to admire, when at the very beginning of your career, where you actually had an aspiration to become one of them, who surprised you the most once you finally met him in person?
Okay, so I came into the league in 2008. I was drafted 5th in 2008. So within my first dozen games in the league, I had played against Tim Duncan twice and Kevin Garnett as well. So playing those guys and in college, you have 2 games a week and you know who you're playing against. And there's only, it's the Pac-12 now, but it used to be the Pac-10. And we had a very good league. We were arguably the best league in the country, in the 2007, 2008 season. But there's just nothing that compares to the travel, the grind, playing against guys that are Hall of Fame, first ballot type of guys. You look at the Hall of Fame class now, those two players, well decorated, Kobe Bryant included. Those guys are well-decorated guys that have put their time in the league, and you're coming in when they're in their prime. So I'm 19 years old playing against these guys that I grew up idolizing. And it was actually Tim Duncan that gave me my welcome to the NBA moment, which was in my first 2 games in the league, which was quite remarkable. But playing against those guys, there's just nothing that even compares or you can, scale up as playing in the NBA grind, especially at 19 years old, because you come from playing 36, 35 to 40 games in college. We made the Final Four all the way to 82 regular season games, plus the preseason. There's just nothing like it.
Yeah, that must have been phenomenal. Who was the most difficult person to guard?
Dirk Nowitzki, without a doubt. He was, he's another guy that had a major influence on my game, as I mentioned prior. And he was somebody who my dad had looked at and said, and had the foresight to see. My dad was 6'9" and can really shoot the ball as well, actually a little bit ahead of his time. But he said, you got to look at this guy, Dirk Nowitzki. This European influence is going to be huge. The game is going to continue to expand. So you look at, what he did in the league and how impressive and dominant he was with 2 finals, winning 1, and year after year, a perennial all-star and a guy that can score from all over the floor. He was somebody that was really, really tough to guard because you had to keep an eye on him as soon as he crossed half court. And then, of course, Steph Curry comes into his own, into the league, back-to-back MVP, the first unanimous MVP, and then it becomes almost small ball and pace and space. So it's a game, and it's a game that's changed since I came in in 2008, having just finished my 12th season now. It continues to have ebbs and flows, and it's just continues to evolve and differentiate itself throughout the years.
Yeah, that's interesting. We spoke a bit about it ahead of our conversation here about how much has the game of basketball changed. Even over the last 10, 15 years. Small ball, all of a sudden, everyone can shoot from distance. Mm-hmm. How has this influenced your thinking about the game? Because now you've been, in this role for many years, 12 years of professional basketball. How does Kevin Love think today versus in his rookie year when you watch a basketball game?
Yeah, well, I was, I had a horrible haircut at that age too, so I had to change that. I was probably 30 to 35 pounds heavier at the time, but that's what was really needed back then because, Memphis had, Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol, San Antonio, you had, like I mentioned, Tim Duncan. Dallas had Dirk Nowitzki. You had Blake Griffin in Los Angeles with DeAndre Jordan. You had LaMarcus Aldridge in Portland. You had, Nene and Paul Millsap in Denver. I mean, the list goes on, and that's just in the Western Conference. So you're beating bigs up. You're playing big basketball, and so it transitioned over time to where the game just started getting faster. I mentioned pace as well as space. I had to be able to shoot threes, so my game couldn't stay the way it was. It had to expand, out on the floor, where I was so used to my entire career and life. My dad teaching me and early coaching when I was taught skill work is to play the game from the inside out. Get yourself going early, get to the free throw line, get to your post moves, and then you can start moving outside. But now teams want to get up 35. If you're the Houston Rockets, maybe 40 plus 3-point shots a game. So the game is really changed. I know basketball purists feel some certain way about it. And, I actually did an interview this year when the analytics, it's become such a big part of our game, where post-ups have decreased 50% in the last 5 years. So that idea of like throwing it into the big man, like you saw during the 90s, is what I watched. You throw it into the big man every time, and then you play off of them. That's lost. That's like a lost art. So it's almost like the big man, especially like who's primarily a 5 and playing center, is almost a dying position. And you've seen that, and you can see it in the post-up. So if you're not able to shoot as a power forward or a center, you're not going to see as much time on the floor as you otherwise might have 10 years ago.
Yeah, but it also presents a unique challenge about staying fit as a big man on the field. So how did you manage to lose that much weight and keep it off? Was that a struggle?
Yeah, I knew after my rookie year. People had told me every off season, great players add something to their game. And for me, I looked at the league and thought, okay, I mentioned that 82-game grind. I thought, how can my body, I've had some tough injuries, some unfortunate injuries in my career, but how can I keep the inflammation down in my body? How can I make sure that my body is prepared for an 82-game season, hopefully plus with playoffs? And because we're burning the candle at both ends for various different reasons. Like I was just thinking, how can I slow down that burn and slow down father time, if you will, as much as I can. So diet and eating was a huge part of it, because I wasn't conscious of, the food I was consuming and what was going into my mouth from that perspective. So I had to make sure that I was, fueling myself the right way. It was going to affect my sleep. Like I said, it was going to affect my inflammation. I have any nagging injuries, it was going to help that. And, I feel like it's just an accumulation of all things. So you can really heal yourself with food.
Yeah. What was the most difficult thing to give up?
Most difficult thing to give up. I think in cutting weight, it's probably, I'm not really a big sugar guy, but it was probably carbohydrates for me.
Yeah,
just learning to become, efficient in burning fat. So adding a lot more fat to my diet and knowing foods that were going to support my immune system, get me through those cold winter months in Minneapolis and Cleveland, and just kind of stave off. I mentioned that inflammation, but also, flu season and making sure that I wasn't going to be prone to, any outbreaks that were going on around me, or, that I was susceptible to throughout those times throughout the year.
Well, and I would like to ask you about your experiences when you joined Cavs, our beloved team. So that was obviously wonderful news for all of us who've been following your career. When you joined, we knew that we had a great team, and the great team that accomplished something really remarkable. Can you share with us, how was it to join the team? What is the influence that LeBron had on your career and the career of others around you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be around LeBron and those close to him since I was about 15 years old, and developing a relationship since then. And as you go through the league, you start to, find, different guys that you're going to look up to and say, okay, he kind of has what I want. He has that winning mentality, he has that leadership mentality. And Bron, he's a freak. He's one of the greatest in the game, but he's been able to, you speak of Father Time in his 16th, 17th year, just continue to, even if he loses that half step of athleticism, he's able to, work on his mind or break down more film or study anything in the game, as well as footwork and post moves. He's finding ways to be, make a difference and continue to play at that high level no matter what. So we had played together in the 2012 Olympics in London. We won a gold medal together, and it was, a time where I really, really wanted to win in my career. So I was 6 years in Minnesota. He had called me and thought, kind of said to me, what would you think about joining the Cavs? I said, I'm all in. I want to win a championship. And that kind of opened up so many good things to me. Like, I think we just had, I didn't look at the exact numbers, but, we had a down year this year, a lot of young guys coming up in the league, some injuries, that sort of thing, trades, what have you, business, of course. But the attendance was still so high. And that was one thing I noticed even before I joined the Cavs, was that when LeBron left, those years, Cleveland is so great, and Great Ohio is so great because no matter what, people are going to show up and support you, especially if you play hard. And on top of that, they live vicariously through their sports. They love the Browns, love the Indians, they love, so on and so forth. It was just great to see a historic franchise in its own right just come out and support. And that was even prior to me getting there. But after the fact, obviously we had our 4 finals runs. It was so great to be around that energy and be a part of something bigger than myself.
Yeah. Well, now you're obviously a leader of the team, our beloved Cavs, in a city that is absolutely crazy about basketball and other professional sports. How do you view your role now when it comes to bringing up younger players along?
Yeah, I'm the old guy now. Actually, it's funny, like, I'm sitting on the plane. We travel so much, and I'm sitting next to Darius Garland, who I've become very, very friendly with, and almost, he calls me big bro, big brother. So he, he's 19 years. He was 19 years old when we first started the season. So I'm sitting there. I'm 12 years in, or halfway through my 12th season, and I just started asking him questions. And it didn't register in my mind that there would be such a disconnect, just because he's like a slight, an era after me. He's 11 years after, I came into the league. So I was just picking his brain and seeing what he thought, and coming off of only 4 games in college basketball, how everything was working out for him, and just finding ways and listening to him, keeping my arm around him, but also lending an ear to see how I can help him out there on the floor, especially being a point guard in this league. You're playing against Russell Westbrook, you're playing against Steph Curry, you're playing against Chris Paul, you're playing against Damian Lillard. You're playing against guys that you don't get a night off. They're coming at you every single night, and you don't get a night off. So, his learning curve had to be pretty steep. So that's just one instance and one guy that I've kind of wrapped my arm around. But it's, the evolution of becoming a leader, becoming more vocal. And I think, the stuff that I know we'll get into off the court has really helped me in, being empathetic and talking to people, relating with them on a level outside of basketball. So like being that big brother, just asking him about his family, like what it was like growing up, just like extending an olive branch that's going to blossom into something a lot bigger than that and completely different. So that relationship, I do believe, really is going to help you out there on the floor.
Well, I think you have also extended your help to many others outside of our Cavs team by speaking openly on the things that very many struggle with and very few dare to speak about. And those are the issues of mental health. You've become a mental health advocate. I remember watching the game when you walked away from the court. And I'm really curious to see, once you make it public, to hear from you, once you made it public, and once you started to speak openly with your teammates and with your friends across the league, what was the reaction?
Well, first, to back it up for a minute, it was scary, very scary to me. And I was very nervous on how, it was going to be received. And I thought I was going to be looked at as weak. I didn't know how, ownership or the front office was, because I was coming up on a contract year and this is my livelihood. Am I not going to be able to play this game that I love for many more years? Will my teammates look at me like I'm weak and they're not going to be able to trust me? And then outside of that, what is the public perception going to be? But I learned that success is not immune to depression. The numbers, especially in America, there's so many people that are dealing with, an anxiety disorder or depression or mental health issues across the board. So for me, having that community and being vulnerable, it allowed me to take that next evolution in my life. And just in seeing that community as well and paying it forward by speaking about it, it's been therapy for me as well. It not only helps other people, but selfishly, it's helped me and helped me be a lot more comfortable in my own skin. And I think I'm hoping that, others, even outside of sports, because you've seen a lot more people come forward now in the sports world, but I'm hoping more people will just continue to come forward and say, hey, I'm dealing with this, because whether you know it or not, there's somebody at arm's distance. And I always say that there's somebody at arm's distance dealing with something that you can't see. And it's not like it's a sprained ankle or it's something where, you have to get surgery on your knee, or it's something that's going to take you out of the game physically. Mentally, there's a lot of stuff going on that you sometimes have to unpack and reveal before you can heal it.
Yeah. I'm curious because I'm sure that you had since then the opportunity to speak to some of the senior players, veterans, even maybe people who have finished their careers. Has any of them acknowledged the struggles that they had as they conversed with you? How was their reaction? Because back in the days, the cultural norm was that you have to be tough, you have to grind it out, and you have to be invincible.
Yeah, no, I think I've said now, and in talking to a lot of players, current and former players, that we're looked at as like we have armor on, or we are superheroes. And I think in some ways too, the success or the money, people say, well, what do they have to worry about? But you look at some of my people I grew up watching, like I was just talking about Robin Williams the other day, one of my favorite comedians of all time, had some of my favorite moments. I did a convention speech where, I had acknowledged the Dead Poets Society, Anthony Bourdain, if anybody's ever watched Parts Unknown, I talked, I felt like I traveled the world with him, had a great job. I always mentioned Kate Spade, who thought, it's going to hurt my brand if I acknowledge this. And there's so many more like that. And you talk about even The Rock, his dealings with, or Dwayne Johnson, his dealings with depression and in his family with his mother. And the list goes on and on and on that I could talk about. But I learned that success is not immune to depression. Like nobody's immune. This thing does not discriminate. So I was greeted, and it's not always the case with a lot of things, but I was greeted with a really warm reception. And from that, I transitioned into creating my own fund, the Kevin Love Fund, which I thought there was just such a chance for immense impact, not only here in the States, but potentially globally, that we're able to impact a lot like the Cleveland Clinic, people even outside of the U.S. that support the mission and our drive and what we're doing.
Well, thank you very much for supporting the cause, and thank you very much for speaking openly about one of the most important public health issues in the United States that I don't think that we're speaking enough about. A lot of mental health issues were accentuated through COVID-19 pandemic. And, the social distancing is the term that actually implies physical distancing rather than social distancing. I think you were one of the first people who pointed at the difference between social distancing and social isolation.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about that, and what's your point of view about the interaction between the COVID-19, the measures that were taken in order to suppress the pandemic, and the mental health?
Yeah, I mean that registered in my brain pretty quick, especially I know they mentioned on the video here about the arena workers. I had considered even their mental health and what they were going through, not knowing if they were going to be able to feed their family, or some of these people are living paycheck to paycheck. And these are some people that I have developed, like a personal relationship with, or even in some cases a first name basis with. So the unknown has been really, really scary. I think, it is continued to evolve over this period for what's needed and who's affected most. But, it's really fascinating to me what life is going to look like coming out of this, because we're going to continue to distance ourselves. We're going to continue to be isolated. So how can we continue to pay it forward and do things like this? We're so lucky to live in a time where we can use our devices. We can use, a Zoom call. We can use, our FaceTimes in order to engage with people, maybe not in the physical form, but be able to reach out and make people feel like they're not on an island, or they're not lonely. Because loneliness is, as I found out, I had done almost a PSA on my own Instagram page, is that, what loneliness and the effects it has, not only on your body, but on your mind over time. It's really, I had no idea. And I wanted to speak about it once I had, kind of absorbed all the numbers and absorbed everything that goes into that. So I know this is long-winded and kind of all over the place, but just continue to stay connected if you can. And it's I mentioned it's going to continue to evolve. Like I'm here in New York City now, and it's really weird interacting with people at a distance, and everybody has a mask on out here. And obviously this was the epicenter and hit the hardest in the States. But, I really do believe that there's a lot of great things that will come out of this. And I'm actually pretty optimistic that when we break through this, human beings, Americans, all different walks of life, no matter who it is, we're resilient, and we will get through it. And we will, hopefully have everything that we need in place to, serve people, especially from all communities, all walks of life, all socioeconomic status, so on and so forth, and just uplift everybody in this moment, coming out of this moment.
I couldn't agree more. I certainly believe that this is a lesson that we can learn a lot from. And speaking about serving everyone, and you mentioned briefly diversity, you are a professional athlete in a sport that is very diverse. And where you interact with people with a variety of different backgrounds. And what's happening currently in the country is the source of concern, deep concern. And I was wondering about not only what your stance, but what is, so to say, the reaction of your fellow athletes. How do you race and diversity?
Well, first and foremost, I believe, in social justice, the Black Lives Matter movement, and just to my very core, I'm an inclusive person. I think, this game of basketball is so amazing, and it's taught me so many lessons, because even if you look at today's game, if you look at last year's, let's take the NBA awards. You had an MVP that was from Greece. You have a Rookie of the Year that's from Slovenia.
Yep.
You have a Most Improved Player that's from Cameroon. Our league is so diverse, and our league has so many different races, so many different ethnicities, people from all over the globe. And that's why it's such a global game. So when we scale up a message, whether it's racial injustice, whether it's mental health, whether it's education, like we're providing, so much positivity as well as resources for tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people. So we're able to scale that up in such a massive way. It doesn't just hit here at home. It's 200, maybe 250 plus countries in the world. It's like when people turn into the finals or the All-Star games, like people are watching and tuned in to these NBA pages. And if they're anything like me, just being a basketball fan and purist and having so much love for the game, like I grew up hanging on these guys every single word. So if LeBron speaks up about education, he talks about the I Promise School in Akron, people are going to listen, and kids are it's cool to be really smart, and it's sexy to be really smart. And oh, mental health, we're allowed to talk about that. That's amazing. We're allowed to, not the, First Amendment rights, of course, but like we're driven to talk about social and racial injustice. It's amazing league, I believe, to be a part of, and that's just going to continue to evolve. Like I mentioned, like treating this, during this time as an opportunity to elicit and make change in many different areas. So that's really, my stance on it. And I think I'm doing my best to really listen and hear, but also, continue to read and consume. So I know, and my team knows, my own personal team, how we can best serve every community in this mental health space and beyond.
Well, Kevin, I couldn't agree more. I think you have absolutely wonderful opportunity to use professional sports as an example of inclusion and a tolerance, and really a platform for a better tomorrow. That I can obviously sense your passion and conviction through every word that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to thank you for the discussion, but I would like to give others, our audience, an opportunity to ask you questions. They were submitted before today's discussion. There are a long list of questions, so we've curated a few. So here's the first one. What attributes do you think make a successful basketball player and team?
I think team-wise, I think these go hand in hand. As somebody who has, I've seen a lot in this league and done a lot in this league in my 12 years. And what I learned in coming to the Cavs is, for a common goal, you're going to have great players. You're going to play with superstar players. You're going to play with role players, guys that, uplift everybody on a day-to-day basis, locker room guys who are maybe, kind of phasing their way out of the, for the betterment of the team is major. Like I went from being, I tell the story now, it's pretty well known that, I went from being the top dog, 25 plus point a game scorer, 10 plus rebound, great player in Minnesota, to then the third option. But, you have to uplift, not that Bron needed help or Kyrie needed help, but we needed to uplift them, let them, run the show, and everybody else had to figure out, okay, how can I be excellent? How can I do the best job in my role? And I think that allows you to work on your game and become the best player that you can be, and just continue to try to be well-rounded, because on different teams, or even now on the floor and in the locker room, I think it evolves. So you have to continue to stay ready. And like I said in the summers, add something to your game, especially in how the game is evolving, that is going to allow you to get more minutes, or it's going to allow you to be more effective or add value to the team. But I think just the integrity of the team, the sacrifice, and just willing to pay the price to win. I think that's what makes a really good team. And having that, like we have this common enemy now in COVID-19, you need a common goal and a common, enemy, so to speak, moving forward. And that's, you want to hoist that Larry O'Brien trophy at the end of the year, but there's many steps you need to take in order to get there. And it's really, really hard to win.
Yeah, the importance of the team, I'm so glad that we spoke about it, because what you just said, I think, is applicable to every team in every profession or in every sport. Just the willingness and the selflessness, degree of selflessness as you approach ultimately, the shared goal and contribution of all in the best way they can, each one. So, second question, what recommendations do you have for others who struggle with mental illness?
I think everybody, just like I always say, dreams don't have deadlines, but I think everybody is slowly and at their own pace going to peel back layers of what they're going through. But I would encourage you to, because hear me when I say this, there is such a large community out there that will have your back. You're not weird, you're not different, you don't have a tail. Like, share your story with whoever you feel comfortable with, because a lot of the times, like myself, I have blinders on and I can't even see how I'm affecting people by being in this space, or even affecting myself, how it's affecting my daily life. And being able to pull back these layers and kind of come out of the shadows and live my life. I mentioned it being my settling in and being comfortable in my own skin. And I think it's a very, it's still becoming a healing process, but I've learned to change my relationship with my anxiety and with my depression. And it's been able to, it's offset it in a big way by not only doing that and finding different things that work for me, as well as my triggers, but in having, this group of people and continuing to do right by that next man or woman. I think that's been a form of therapy for me. If you ask me, if I would have been in this position to help as many people as I have and will continue to, I would have said, no way. Like, I identified as a basketball player. I had just my singular focus, but that's just not the case anymore. I've allowed myself to get into so many different things and live my life out in the open. And I'm super proud to be able to say that, because I don't know if that would have been the case if I did a major episode and be willing to share it publicly.
Well, and we're very grateful for you sharing it publicly and also supporting the mission. And you've supported Cleveland Clinic in very many of our joint efforts to help people with mental health. And as you nicely said, I think caring for someone involves a person who needs help, but also their caregivers on the other side, caregivers who are caring for those with mental health illness. If you were to give an advice to us as caregivers, people who are trying to help people with mental illness, what would you advise?
It's something that's gonna, like I said, there's gonna be evolution. I believe in all this, especially coming out of this. I mean, we even talk at my fund, like we have our pillars, and it's continuing to beat down the stigma. And I think that is that large community aspect, and having conversations like this and knowing that, it's okay to have feelings and be vulnerable and show empathy to people. We have education, continue to educate people. Like I grew up in, it's like I had my health class, I had my physical health class, and then I didn't know anything about, like, we didn't have the resources or even mentor type programs where anybody asked really how we were doing or be able to check in with us mentally. And I even think moving forward, and we're working at our fund to have 9th and 10th graders write first person stories like I did in the Players Tribune and as a way of therapy. So I think it's really going to continue to evolve in that aspect, and we're going to find great ways to affect people. So I think that's great. I think tools, just like we have our tools to stay engaged and stay on top of things. I think we in the video they had mentioned Headspace like that, and we have had great relationships with obviously my alma mater, UCLA, but J.K. Livin, we've worked with a number of kids in the greater Cleveland area. Bring Change to Mind was a great relationship that we've worked with. So we have a lot of leaders in those spaces that are going to be able to help in a big way. And then the last one is research. Like, we're going to continue to research. I think that's a major part, obviously, of what you guys do at the clinic, and I admire that. And being here for being in Cleveland for 6 years, we obviously love you guys. So, I think getting back to your question, though, I think we're trying to find ways and partner with people like yourself to be able to affect the masses, but especially kids. Like, I think that younger generation, there's nothing that robs us of our human potential like mental illness or like mental health problems. And whether it be, I always say this, whether it be anxiety disorder, whether it be depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, like at 14 years old, it's a young people problem. At 14 years old, 50% are diagnosed, and by 24, 75% are diagnosed. And it's 1 in 7 kids under the age of 18 are dealing with a mental health disorder, and half go untreated. And I could talk about even back home in Portland, the second leading, killer between the ages of 10 and 34 is suicide. And then there was a 10-year study in Ohio that said, suicide is up 24% in the last 10 years. I believe it came out in 2018. is up 24%. And then in ages 16 above, and this was the crazy part to me, 14 and below, it's up 80%. So it's a young people problem, and it continues to trend in that direction. And it's I don't know what it's going to look like coming out of this, but we already are underfunded and don't have enough resources, not only in, the places that we see, but in underprivileged and underserved areas. That's where you talk about social justice and even Black Lives Matter. Like, we need more diversity. We need, more ethnic groups, people that are going to be able to, help and, diversify this space, because we really, really need that. I don't know the exact number, but I know it's a very, very small portion of therapists or people in this world are people of color, and we need more of that. We drastically need more.
And I think what you mentioned also, what is very important, is the mentorship. As you said, it is not just to have a therapist and caregivers available, but also to have people in the community who can serve as mentors. And there is our next question evolves around the mentorship around sports. And what advice would Kevin Love give to a young person who would like to pursue a career in professional basketball? Do it, don't do it,
do it
a little bit.
Because I think sports have such a commonality to them. And I wouldn't be the person I am today without basketball. Like, I think sports have a way to teach you diversity and resilience and, teamwork, communication. So, there's so many great lessons to be learned through sport. And you talk about mentors. Some of my greatest mentors were my coaches, people that, took me under their wing, showed me the ropes. And this is even outside of basketball as well. And listen, I didn't work well in soccer at all. They typically put me in the goal. But baseball, like, I had great coaches growing up, some not so good too. I talk about my father all the time. I learned a lot from his successes and a lot from his failures, where he actually learned more lessons. I know that's typically thought of as a cliche, but it's really true. You learn a lot from your wins, but maybe even more from your losses and lessons. So that's huge. But I would say chase the game. The best piece of advice I ever got was from Hall of Famer Kevin McHale, one of the best power forwards of all time. He said, chase the game, or chase what you love, and everything you love will chase you right back. So much good will come from that.
So as we're coming to the end of our conversation, I have two questions from a person who told me that I have to ask you. That's my daughter, Noah, 14 years old. She's a huge fan, and she said, well, you have to ask Kevin, what is his favorite hobby outside of basketball? And a second question, I'm giving both of them at the same time because they're really tough. And what music are you listening to?
Oh, wow. I'll answer the music one first. Let's see here. It varies over time. I think it depends on the mood I'm in. Like, if I'm really trying to calm myself down and like reduce my anxiety or meditate, that sort of thing, I have this playlist that I call airplane mode. It's so because I just shut off. I get away from the phone. I get away from all this stuff and listen to a band called Hammock. There's no words. It's just very soothing, easy to listen to. I usually put it on, like I said, when I'm meditating or I'm getting treatments. If I'm going back to like my father's era or my mother's era, I'm typically listening to like the Rolling Stones if I'm being nostalgic, or Motown, like Sam Cooke, that sort of thing. But I actually have a vinyl player here that I have so many different records. I can even listen to like the Black Keys, New School Rock. Obviously, they're from Akron, Ohio. Killer Mike, Drake, like rap. I grew up listening to hip hop. With their two new albums, I'm trying to think of who else. There's so much music out there. It's hard for me to say, like, pinpoint only a few artists that I listen to. It's all over the map. Like, I hate when people say, oh, yeah, I listen to everything. I'm like, okay, give me a few artists. But like, I really pretty much do listen to everything. I'm like one of those very small people that do that. But sorry, what was the last question? I blanked out. Oh, what am I? So music.
Hobby. Music, okay.
Anytime I can, we talked about before we came on, like I didn't want to be redundant in my workouts, and listen, easier to stay in shape than to get back into shape. I've learned that the hard way, but I love working out. I mean, I've grown to love that. I love art, books, wine. I'm a big wine drinker. Sometimes in excess, not too often, but love wine, big foodie, love to travel, love my dog. There's just so much that's opened up to me in my life that I love, and I think that'll continue to evolve. I think as you get older, I think if you just, pay it forward, the world will open up for you. It's kind of fun to see that happen throughout your life.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for all that you're doing, but thank you very much for a person who you are. Thank you for what you're doing for our city, for our community, for our beloved Cavs. We wish you lots of success. And once again, thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. So before we go, I'd like to tell you about the next Virtual Ideas for Tomorrow guests. Our next guest is Steve Schwartzman, founder and CEO of Blackstone Group. We'll speak with him next week on June 23rd. He will be followed by Dr. David Feinberg, Vice President of Google Health, who will join us on July 28th. On August 18th, we'll welcome Brian Grazier, co-founder and CEO of Imagine Entertainment. And Judy Faulkner, CEO and founder of Epic Systems, will join us on September 2nd. And Tim Brown, Executive Chair of IDEA, on September 21st. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great night.